My name is Kevin, and I was 25 years old when this happened. This was in 2019 before COVID, back when Walmart was still open 24/7, aka the best time to be at Walmart in my own opinion. Well anyways, I worked the graveyard shift at a Walmart in a small Florida town, one of the old school ones that stayed open 24/7. My hours were 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. 5 nights a week. I stocked shelves, unloaded pallets, cleaned up spills, and dodged weirdos who wandered in at 3 a.m. to buy one bandana or ask if we sold live bait. It wasn't a bad gig. Honestly, I kind of liked the stillness. No customers yelling. No kids crying in the toy aisle. Just fluorescent lights humming overhead. The occasional chatter from the overnight crew members, and the sounds of boxes being sliced open. That night, this was February I think, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before COVID hit the headlines for real, was no different. I had a cart of disinfectant sprays, Lysol wipes, and all that other cleaning stuff no one cared about at the time. I was in aisle 16 minding my business, zoning out, when I noticed someone standing at the far end, tall, slender, wearing a faded brown hoodie, hood up, torn jeans. Could have been any dude just killing time, but he wasn't moving, not browsing, not touching anything, just standing there, staring at the shelves like he was lost in thought, or worse, like he was waiting. I gave the usual line, "You find everything all right, man?" He turned towards me, and that's when I got the first hit of something off. His eyes looked blank, not tired, not high, just empty, like there was nothing behind them. He didn't say a word, just slowly shook his head no. One small movement, then he turned back toward the shelves. I let it go. You see weird people working nights. Rule of thumb, don't push. I moved a few aisles over to the cleaning tools. Mops, buckets, brooms, you get the point. 10 minutes in, I feel it again. That prickly sensation like I'm being watched. I look up. There he is again. This time he's at the opposite end of the aisle. Same posture. Hands in his hoodie pocket. Head tilted just slightly. Not close enough to be in my space, but definitely close enough to keep tabs on me. "Hey there, need any help?" I ask again, louder now. Another head shake. Nope, still no words. I'm starting to get annoyed now, but I'm also uneasy. People who want trouble usually make a scene. This guy wasn't doing that. He was lingering, existing, but in a way that felt deliberate. I leave the aisle, push my car toward the back. I'm halfway to the break room when I glance behind me. He's not there. Good. Maybe he was just a quiet guy with poor social skills. But you know that feeling when your brain tells you something's off? That gut instinct? Mine just wouldn't shut up. A half hour passes. I'm back in aisle 5 now, working through a fresh cart of paper towels. I'm talking with Mike, another overnight guy, when I see the man yet again. This time he's not even pretending to shop. He's just standing by the end cap, facing sideways like he's listening. His eyes are on us. Mike notices too. "You know that guy?" he asked me under his breath. "Nope, just keeps popping up though," I say. Mike doesn't say anything else. He just mutters, "Weird," and rolls his card away. I keep working. Time crawls. Every so often, I see that hoodie pop up across the store, never holding anything, never saying a word, just appearing. By 4 a.m., I'm so keyed up, I start skipping aisles, moving quicker, trying to stay unpredictable. It doesn't help. Eventually, he shows up again, like he's playing some kind of game with me. The only time that he almost interacted with me was when I took a detour through toys. I caught him watching me from the bike section, just standing behind a Spider-Man helmet on display. We locked eyes for maybe 3 seconds. My stomach dropped. Still nothing. No words. Just that long, frozen stare. At 6:30 a.m., daylight started to push through the tinted front doors. A few early shoppers then trickled in, mostly seniors, people grabbing prescriptions or getting a jump on groceries. The air felt a little safer with others around. By the time I clocked out at 7:04 a.m., I hadn't seen him in about 15 minutes. I figured that he must have finally left. I walked in my car alone, keys clenched between my fingers. It was a dumb habit that I picked up from my sister, just in case, she always said. That morning, it didn't feel so dumb. The next day, I slept in. I got up around noon, threw on the news while eating leftover Chinese from the night before, and that's when I saw it. Local Walmart issues trespass order for stalker. Man accused of targeting overnight employees. The image was grainy, pulled from a security camera, but it was him. Same hoodie, same expressionless stare. The report said that he had been visiting different Walmart locations in the county during the late hours. Never bought anything, just followed employees, observed. At one store, he had apparently waited outside in the lot until an employee got off their shift. Didn't approach, just followed them halfway home in his car before peeling off. Cops said that he hadn't committed a crime yet, but Walmart banned him anyway. Said they were erring on the side of caution. Good. I didn't see him again after that. A few months later, the pandemic hit, and the world flipped upside down. Walmart stopped doing 24-hour shifts. Our crew broke apart. Some of us got laid off. I got a new job eventually, something in delivery, but I'll never forget that night. Not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. That tension, the questions, the gut instinct I almost talked myself out of listening to. People are strange. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Doesn't matter if it's day or night. If something feels off, trust it. We live in a world where danger doesn't always come in shouting. Sometimes it comes in silence, in stillness, in a stare that lasts way too long. Be careful no matter who you are. Be aware, stay sharp, because the truth is, some people are just wired wrong.
My name's Nick, and I'm from England. Back in the mid-90s, when our son was still only 4, we went on a family holiday to Tuscany in Italy. My wife had found this incredible villa in the holiday brochure, which was up in the hills above a place called Lucalena. It looked like a little slice of paradise, and it was shockingly cheap compared to some of the less rural villas and apartments. So without delay, we booked it for 2 weeks, paid the fees and deposit, then counted the days into our dream holiday. We landed in Pisa in the late afternoon, and while our young son Tom hated the flight, he loved the ice cream that we bought him before the journey out to Lucalena. It was a good 3-hour drive from Pisa, so by the time we were within maybe half an hour of Lucalena in our village, it was completely dark. We were right out in the countryside too, so the stars above us lit up the sky, and little Tom fell asleep after staring out the window at them. My wife was struggling to stay awake by the time we came to a crossroads, and I was pretty exhausted from the day's traveling myself. So rather than make a gut decision on which path to take, I stopped the car, got my map out, and consulted it before making the appropriate turn. I reassured my wife that we were only a few miles away and that we'd be at the villa within 15 to 20 minutes, and then I drove up a steep path that leveled off at the top. Because of the slope, I couldn't see what was at the top, so I made sure to crest the hill nice and slowly to avoid any kind of collision. But then, as I did, someone jumped out of the bushes at the side of the road and was lit up by my headlights. I could see that he had a long, double-barrel shotgun in his hands, and he was aiming it right at me. I slammed on the brakes as my wife started to panic. Then I was struggling to get the car in reverse when all of a sudden I heard, "No, no," from outside the car. A second man had jumped out of the bushes and was lowering the first man's shotgun while telling him no. They both shot us a look of horror, realizing we were not who they thought we were. And the second man, who stopped the first from shooting, walked over to the driver's side window and tapped on the glass. When I rolled it down, he gave me and my wife this big, nervous smile as he said, "Mi dispiace molto, signore," which I knew from my Italian phrase book meant, "I'm very sorry, sir." I didn't really speak much Italian, and what little I'd learned went right out the window when that guy pointed a shotgun at me, so all I could manage in reply was, "Parle inglés?" Or, "Do you speak English?" And the man said, "No, no," in that melodic, drawn-out Italian way, and then said, "No English, mi dispiace." I then heard my wife ask, "Are you police? Policia?" And the man replied, "Si, policia," with the same big smile on his face, and then told us, "Avanti, vai, vai," which just means, "Come on then, move along." And we both thanked him, and by that point, Tom had woken up in the back seat and was getting very agitated, asking, "Mommy, Daddy, who are these men?" We told him it was the police, but they had been very friendly and were letting us go. I think my wife believed them at the time, so she was very convincing and reassuring Tom that there was nothing to worry about. But me, I didn't believe a word he'd said about being the police. I didn't say anything with Tom in earshot, and I didn't want to scare him, and arriving at the villa really took the edge off too, because it was even nicer in the flesh than it was in the brochure. But then, once we got Tom all tucked into bed and had a few moments to settle down, I told my wife what I'd been thinking. I told her how I didn't think those men were the police. They weren't in uniform, that shotgun looked like it had come off a farm, not from a police arsenal, and they didn't even attempt to show us any badges or identification or anything like that. And she asked me, if they weren't police, who were they? And I replied, the Mafia. My wife just sat down in bed in silence as I made my case, and when I was done, it made sense to her too. A couple of mafiosos had been waiting to ambush someone, and they thought that person was us. The only thing that stopped us freaking out completely was that we were at least a couple of miles away from that ambush site, so the chances of running into them again seemed minimal. She suggested we call the police in the hopes they had an English speaker down at the station, but even if they did, I wasn't sure that was a good idea. The idea of rocking the boat like that made me feel even more nervous than having that shotgun pointed at me and my family, because while that whole thing had apparently been a mistake, having us snitching on the local mafia on our first day in Italy was a deliberate act that might well bring us some undue attention. I'm not saying it was an easy decision to make. I was furious that some idiot had pointed a gun at us, but it quickly became a question of, if we're going to be staying there for 2 weeks, what was the course of action that was going to keep us safest? And that's how we decided to honor that age-old mafia tradition of keeping our bloody mouths shut. The next day we decided to walk down to Lusalena to do some exploring, and that's how we found this little bar that served paninis, espresso, and assortment. I asked the bartender what it was about, and after listening to the news lady speak for a minute or so, he turned back to me and said, "There's been a murder, not far from here. His was a businessman who got killed. Oh, terrible thing." I asked him exactly how far away the murder had been, and after consulting with some of the older men, the bartender confirmed my suspicions. It had taken place in almost the exact spot where those armed men had jumped out of the bushes ready to fire at us. I didn't rush to tell the wife. I didn't want to frighten her any more than she already was. But later that day, once we were back at the villa and getting ready to head out for dinner, I told her about the murder. Again, it wasn't like anything we could do about it, or rather, it was nothing we were willing to stick our necks out over by getting involved with local crime. The best thing we could do was try to forget about it, head to Lusalena and enjoy some incredible home-cooked food. It was so good that our young son Tom suddenly didn't mind trying new things when they were all so delicious. And so we ate our fill, and when we were all finished, we asked for the bill. The waiter then comes out with the restaurant's owner, and the pair of them explain in very broken English that the meal had already been paid for. Then when I asked who the generous person was, they explained that it was someone we'd had a misunderstanding with. At first, my wife and I didn't make the connection, and we tried explaining there hadn't been any kind of misunderstanding. We loved the food, and we wanted nothing more than to support their business by paying our bill. But the owner insisted. Our money was no good there. Then when we ate there again the second night, with every intention of leaving a large tip, they once again explained our food was free. But by then, we'd figured out who was paying for our meals. It was the Mafia. It didn't happen anywhere else, and we made sure to visit plenty of other places because we felt terrible. I mean, as far as we knew, the Mafia hadn't really paid for our food, and those poor people were being forced to cook for free. But then, every time we did eat there, they seemed really happy to see us, and the waiter would always bring our gelato for our 4-year-old son without us asking for it. My wife didn't always approve of all that ice cream, but you better believe Tom did. And that made us think that maybe those Mafia guys really were paying the owners for all our food, and that they were running a little scam of their own and giving us as much as possible so they could claim it all back from the Mafia. But since we didn't see them ever again, I suppose we'll never know. They never reached out to us, and we didn't see those 2 armed guys around the village at all, but I suppose it was probably a case of they saw us, we just didn't see them. It was an amazing but very intense holiday, but the next time we visited Italy, we went to a completely different part of the country and had no repeat encounters with any nocturnal assassins. We had to pay for all our meals, which my wallet definitely wasn't thanking me for, but we still found that second holiday much more relaxing than the first.